Hello and welcome to the next episode of the Burden of Proof, a JC Law podcast, where we discuss various legal topics with different professionals around the legal industry. This week we're taking a bit of a pivot from family law, and we are diving into more of the criminal defense side with sex offenses. I'm your host, Tyler Lewis, and I've got Peter Crawford here. Peter.
Tyler.
How you doing?
Good, man, good. Like you said, today we're going to take a little bit of a different change of direction from the usual course, which is family law, into criminal. And that's why we have Mark Sobel here today, who is the vice president of the Criminal Department. He has how many years of experience?
Well, I have now over 13 years of experience as an attorney, both in New York and here in Maryland combined.
You've done all types of criminal cases, DUIs, you've had felony cases, misdemeanors, whatever it is.
Whether it goes from traffic court to people facing up to life in prison, we cover everything from beginning to end.
And I forgot to mention, we're actually going to have a second segment here today with Gonzalez, who is your assistant, who pretty much saves Mark on a daily basis from...
Yeah, I call her my boss. She tells me where to be, when to be, where to be, and I go according to what she tells me. So
Absolutely.
She's the boss.
Absolutely.
How about that?
So without further ado, let's get into the questions. The first question we have is, how does sex offense investigations start? Is there some sort of baseline accusation that requires law enforcement to act?
And that's a great question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to first separate sex offense investigations into two types of sex offense investigation that we usually see. The first one involves adults, okay, where an adult is making a complaint about another adult. And I also want to discuss about children, because I'll probably say a majority of our cases are children coming forward and saying that they were sexually abused by usually a family member or another adult.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I'm going to talk about the child one first, because that's the one that we see, as I said, the majority of the time. Those start off with, generally the child will make an accusation, usually to either a parent, and that's most of the time we see that they tell a parent, that, hey, uncle so-and-so, was touching me or something like that. Mm-hmm. Or they many times will tell a mandatory reporter. Okay, so like they're in school, they're acting out, things like that. They get sent to the school counselor, and the school counselor will say, "Hey, what's going on? You've been off a little bit lately," mm-hmm. And they'll make an accusation saying, "Yeah, well, I'm holding something in with what's hurting me or touching me," and things like that.
Who else would be in that mandatory reporter section? Is it just school administrators and then parents or family members, or is there any sort of, does it cover a wide range of other people? Or?
Oh yeah, no, that's a good question, and it's a wide range of people that are mandatory reporters. I would say therapists are also mandatory reporters, even though there is confidentiality involved and privilege involved in it. But also they are required to report it to authorities if there's any issues. Doctors as well. Okay, there'll be many times where doctors will could be a regular exam, yearly physical that the child is going through. And when I say child, in your mind you may be thinking 5, 6, or 7 years old. I'm even talking about teenagers. They're children as well, and so they may be going for a physical, and the doctor may say, may ask questions, which solicit a response saying, yeah, what goes, hurting me, touching me, things like that, and that will be so that's how investigations usually start. When it comes to an adult, okay, where a person claims, usually what we think of a he said, she said scenario, mm-hmm. in which whether was it consensual or was it non-consensual, was somebody intoxicated, was somebody not, those are usually reported right away. Okay, there's usually a report right away in which the person would call the police saying, hi, I was raped, I was assaulted, and things like that, mm-hmm. and they'll be taken to a hospital and things like that. So those are the typical ways in which sex offense investigations usually begin.
Continue with that a little bit. So if they go to the hospital, there's some type of procedure done, and then does it go straight to the state's attorney's office, or how does it proceed from there?
Right. So that's a great question, and that will go into what happens during the course of a sex offense investigation. And I would say is that, let's say they come into the hospital. Okay, if it's involving an adult, they come to the hospital and they'll do something called a safe exam. Okay, safe doesn't mean that it's safe and not safe. Safe stands for sexual assault forensic exam. Okay, and they're looking for certain things. They're looking for any type of injuries. Okay, usually to the area. They'll also be looking for any type of forensic evidence. Okay, if there is any type of DNA, any type of semen, any type of what we call now something called touch DNA, in which they'll be able to make a determination as to whether forensically it looks like a sexual assault took place. What I would tell you is, to answer your question, is that for cases involving children, again, which is the majority of our cases, there's usually, I'll probably say about 95% of the time, no forensic evidence. So there won't be any DNA or anything like that, because generally children will delay reporting. Okay, because again, children usually don't report it right away. Again, like I said before, they're talking to a teacher, a parent, or a counselor. But regarding the process, okay, regarding what happens, does the state attorney's office, are they called in the middle of the night and saying, "Hi, this lady came to the hospital," or is it like a Law and Order where they call the detective over?
Exactly.
So that's a good thing. So I'm gonna go through with quickly about an adult, and I'll go to children. Okay, for an adult, generally they'll call the police, and then generally in most jurisdictions there'll be an on-call special victims detective. Okay, now special victims unit is not only for law and order. Okay, there are actually special victim units in probably the majority of, especially the bigger counties here.
Do they run 24/7, or is that only 9 to 5?
No, so that's 24/7. Okay, there'll be an on-call detective. Now, I've seen cases in which they tried calling the detective wasn't available. That does happen sometimes. You can't get in touch. Then clearly not a very good on-call detective. And they'll go ahead and they'll give all the information, and the next day the detective will call or something. But typically they'll first go to a detective. Now, when it comes to children, it's a little bit of a different process. Okay, the police will obviously be contacted. Okay, but you also have child protective services will get involved right away. Okay, so especially if it involves a case in which a child is claiming a family member who, especially if they live with them, okay, is sexually abusing them, CPS will get involved right away. Okay, and they'll swoop in and they'll come in. They'll make sure the child's taken out of the home or the alleged perpetrator is taken out of the home.
So you have the criminal case and also the civil case, which the CPS investigation, possibly send a petition, they're taking the kid and putting in place a shelter care order, which is them saying that the kid is no longer in a house where it's appropriate for them to stay.
Correct.
So where would the kid possibly go in that situation?
So the children in that situation, generally they try to keep the children to keep things status quo for them. Okay, so they are very reluctant to take a child out of the home and put somewhere else. Okay, now that does happen. Okay, in times where they'll say, okay, let's put the child with a family member. Okay, so usually a grandparent and an uncle or something like that. Someone the child is familiar with. I'll probably say most of the time they try to keep things status quo, and they'll reach out to the alleged perpetrator and other adults in the house.
So it's not always an immediate we got to grab the kid out of the house, or we're taking her tonight. Sometimes it is more of a slower process of figuring things out, or do you say it just depends on the case?
No, it depends on the case, but actually I think it's pretty quick. Okay, especially with that, because they're not going to allow that child to, if the child's in a hospital, let's say, which again is not usual, because usually it's a delayed reporting or something. Okay, but they usually will not allow the child to go back home and to be with a person who he or she alleges was sexually abusing.
Which makes sense, right? You want the state to protect the kid as much as possible. It makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, so usually they'll go ahead and they would usually the perpetrator might leave the house. So especially if it's a dad, let's say, that's the accusation, then the mom's involved as well. Mom will say, okay, Dad, you go live somewhere else. Now, getting back to to pivot to the criminal thing. Usually there'll be simultaneously to the CPS going on, the criminal detectives will get involved as well. Okay, and these detectives, many of them are part of what we call the Child Advocacy Center. Okay, and again, the bigger counties around Anne Arundel County, Baltimore County, Howard County, the bigger counties, Montgomery County, all have their own child advocacy centers. Okay.
And not just in Maryland too. They have in other states as well. Do you know?
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they
some
have
sort of it. Some
yes,
form.
something similar. And if they don't, they probably should. But I'm
Right.
guessing that they probably do because I think it works well. And the reason why I like it, the fact that they have it, is because I know who to go to. Okay, so if a potential client calls us up and says, "Hey, you know, my child was saying ABC, my niece or nephew saying ABC about me," things like that. I know right away, if it's Baltimore County, I'm calling York Road, I'm calling Child Access Center in York Road, okay? If it's Anne Arundel County, I know we're going to Veterans Highway in Millersville, I'm calling them up saying, "Hey, who's handling this?" So,
Right, I mean, that's part of the
Yeah.
benefit of you having 13 years of experience is you probably create a relationship with these departments, with these attorney generals, with other people in the legal field because you're the go-to in this particular case.
Well, I appreciate that. And humbly, it's something which, you know, it takes time building relationships. And relationships are very important, okay? And I would say relationships is not only with the, you know, with the state's attorneys and the attorneys, but also knowing the process. And the thing I would tell you is my experience with like Howard County, the police are very reluctant to ever talk to us. Okay, now they do, okay, because they need our cooperation on things, but they're very reluctant to talk to us, and many times I have to go through the state's attorney's office, okay? While in Baltimore County, I won't even talk to the state's attorney until charges are filed, okay, in a situation. One other thing to mention about the process is that the detective will do an investigation, okay, we'll have the child will come in and the child will do something called a forensic interview, okay, in which they will be questioned by somebody who's trained in this thing. And I'll tell you is, even though they're trained, I think their training is a little lousy, the way it's watching some of these forensic interviews. But they'll go ahead and they will do an interview of the child, okay? And generally then they'll interview any other witnesses, okay, and other family members. And finally, they will always try to reach out to the alleged perpetrator to try to get, quote unquote, their side of the story. So that's the process of them. They'll then conclude their investigation and they'll present it to the state's attorney's office, who will make the ultimate decision as to whether or not charges are filed.
So moving on from the investigation part,
Yeah.
what are some of the common few misconceptions that you see clients carry when it comes to sex offense investigations, and what would you like to tell them ahead of time about what's going on, and not legal advice, because obviously we're not giving legal advice on here, but just talk about what you would do in that situation.
Because I mean, I can imagine if getting accused of that coming in, you don't even know what to think, and I'm sure you get a lot of clients or potential clients that come in and they're like, I don't know what to do.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure it causes them to make some mistakes or things that they probably shouldn't have done along the way.
Absolutely, and that's a great question. And what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to go a step before that. Okay, a misconception of before you even call me up, okay, or call us up and say, "Hey, I need help." Okay, huge misconception. People always say, "Oh my gosh, if I have an attorney call up this detective, that means I'm guilty of something." Okay, because I'm hiding behind an attorney. Why are you hiding behind an attorney?
Right,
Okay,
right.
and what I'll tell you is the exact opposite. Okay, what it shows them is that you're taking it very seriously. Okay, and that you're not ignoring it or anything like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll tell you is you need legal help. Okay, go into it. Okay, if you know my car is acting up, okay, I go to a mechanic. If you don't want to see me try to fix the car. But I take it to the mechanic. If I have a health issue, I'm going to the doctor. Okay, if you have a legal issue, you go to a lawyer. Okay, it doesn't mean you're guilty. It doesn't mean it means you're being smart and being proactive.
Right,
Okay?
and that makes sense, right? In the legal field, I feel like there's a few misconceptions like that. It's like when people say, I want to plead the fifth, I don't want to talk.
Right.
People all the time, for some reason, still talk to police, even though 99% of the time, it's better to say, I have an attorney, I'm not talking right now, talk to my attorney.
And I'm really happy you brought that up because that will go to my next point, my next misconception. Okay, my next misconception is, okay, I'm gonna talk to a lawyer, okay, just to say, but I'm gonna go in. I have nothing to hide. Okay, detective, you want to talk to me? No problem. Let's meet tomorrow at 12 o'clock, okay? And I'll give you my statement, everything like that. Okay, I have nothing to hide. I didn't do anything. I don't need a lawyer. I can do this on my own. This is easy.
Right.
Don't. Okay, don't.
Find that
couple-
middle ground, right?
Well, because what I'll tell you is some of these detectives, okay, and especially ones in the child advocacy center, they are very good at their jobs, okay? I said these social workers, not so much. The detectives, they're really good at their jobs, okay? And I've seen detectives give an interview, you know, and it could go on for a while, go on for 2-3 hours sometimes, right? And I've seen brilliance of these detectives where the person went from nothing to admitting to it 2 hours later. And it's like, wow, how did that happen? Okay, that's number one. Number two is there's sometimes you can say things at that interview which you might think are totally innocuous. I mean, okay, I could say that, but then when you take it out of context, or when you look at it from a thing, it's like, whoa, you just like admitted you were alone with the child. Okay, you admitted that you drove the child somewhere. Okay, that's something that's why you need an attorney there to assist you.
Absolutely.
Okay?
I mean, the detectives are looking at the situation through one lens, right?
Right.
They're looking at it, okay, what happened here? They got to advocate for the kid, and in order to do that, sometimes they'll read into situations or read into context that might not necessarily be what you meant when you said it, but that's not how they're going to view it now because that's the perspective they're coming from.
Absolutely. And I'll give, obviously, got to keep client privilege, but I do want to give one example of this happening at one of these interviews, okay? Because we get many times clients come to us, and I'll talk to you in a couple minutes about that, when we want to talk to detectives and when not, okay? And we decided, we weighed the pros and cons, and we decided, let's go talk to the detectives, okay? Let's give a statement, okay? And we went down, it was over in Milledgeville, and we went down there and we gave a statement, and there were some text messages that went between my client and the mother of the child that was making the accusation against him. And if you read those messages out of context, or text messages, it literally sounded like the person was apologizing and that they're wrong, right? However, there was a backstory behind it. Okay, those text messages were way out of context because something happened right before. And I went ahead and I was like, Mr. So-and-so, don't you want to clarify what those text messages meant? Because the detective had the text messages already from the mom. And he explained, the detective was like, oh, that makes sense. Just to know, that person at the end was not charged, okay? But I could almost guarantee you that person would have been charged because you read those text messages and be like, wow. And that's why I made sure when I was there saying, hey, client, tell the detective what those meant, what the backstory, and that's something that comes up on these things, and just having a lawyer there is very, very important in case something like that comes up in the course of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of see the similarities between family law and this criminal defense is all about getting the full story, getting all of the context. I mean, you see it on day to day from some of the stuff you're working on as well. It's just about at the end of the day, a lawyer needs to kind of uncover the full story and present it in a way that's advantageous for the client.
Absolutely. And not only that, when you're in a stressful situation like that, to have a third person perspective there to kind of guide you through the conversation and give you perspective on the entire situation is valuable because, like I said, you're extremely stressed out. You've never been in that type of situation. You kind of get that tunnel vision, and it's, like I said, very useful to have somebody else there to guide you through that.
Yeah, and what I tell you is that I always tell my clients, be natural as much as possible. I know, yes, you are stressful and like that, but they always say, what am I supposed to say? And I never say, I can tell you what to say. You got to tell the truth, okay? And if you're not going to tell the truth, then we don't need to talk, okay? You got to tell the truth, okay? Tell the truth, tell your side of the story. And what I always tell them is, I'll be there to help you, okay? And if things go wrong or you're in any issues, okay? But fight for yourself. There's no better advocates. I mean, lawyers are great. Okay, we got to fight for our clients, and I will do it until the day I die. Okay,
absolutely.
Unless I get to retire first. But otherwise, it's no better advocate than yourself. Fight for yourself. This person is saying you sexually assaulted them, which is probably one of the worst accusations to have against you. Okay, especially when a child is.
And I think
fight for yourself.
Yeah, and I think so many clients come in and they're just like, oh, I need a lawyer and it'll fix my situation. But it's like the lawyer's there to help guide you, but you have to also continue to advocate for yourself and tell the truth and tell the whole story from your perspective. So
It's a partnership.
Yeah,
It really is a partnership.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And what I'll tell you is one other thing that comes up in these things, because I mentioned it before, about like I'm talking about talking to the detective, right?
Mhm.
Now, just because the detective calls you doesn't mean you have to talk to them, okay? You mentioned the Fifth Amendment before, okay? The Fifth Amendment is real, okay? It's not, again, not just TV and things like that, okay? It is real. You do have a right to remain silent, okay? And whenever someone comes to us, and usually the typical situation would be, detective gave me a call and said, hey, come on in for an interview, things like that. The first thing my client and I would do is we gather the facts that we know, okay? And then we make a determination that we weigh the pros and cons of talking to the detective, okay? Now, there are certain times my client would tell me A, B, and C, okay? And I'd be like, whoa, I don't want the detective to know that, okay? Therefore, we decline an interview, okay? Now, there are other times we'll go through the pros and cons, say, let's skip an interview. Now, I know what your next question is going to be. What are some of our pros and cons? So here's the scary part, okay? The way I always look at these things is if we're playing this, because they're usually video and audio recorded, okay?
Mhm.
If we're showing this in front of a jury in 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 12 months from now, however long it takes, okay? How is it going to look in front of a jury? Okay,
True.
Which is
True.
scary, and I tell my clients that they're like, "What jury? What jury? No, what? No, what?"
We're just an investigation.
Right,
What are you talking about?
right. But you have to look at it through that lens. This is a chess match, okay?
Mhm.
And which we have to look at the checkmate at the end is when this is played in front of a jury, how is it going to sound? Okay, is it going to sound like, wow? What I like to do is when you do give a statement, and what's my closing argument at a jury trial is, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this man had nothing to hide. Okay, he voluntarily went into the police station to give a statement. He vehemently denied it. Okay, there is absolutely no evidence, other than the child saying it happened and something happened. Okay, but he voluntarily went there, gave a statement. And if he testifies at trial, which I'm a big believer that he should. Okay, and usually depends on the situation. And he took the stand here today, said the same exact thing. Okay, same, consistent, and then in the juror's mind, they're like, wow, okay, this person really, he voluntarily came in and saying. So there's a reason why we like to. Now, there are times that my client might admit to things, okay, which I don't want them to admit to, okay, and that's one of the reasons why.
Any attorney.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, all right, buddy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the other part is that sometimes, okay, in that if the state doesn't know your side of the story.
Mhm.
Okay, state doesn't know your side of the story. So then, you have to tell the truth always, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
But the state doesn't know your side, and that helps with, with preparing for testimony. Also helps in negotiations. Okay, and just one more example. I love giving examples. Okay, I had a client who, I don't like when they do this, but he pretty much told me, yeah, it happened. Okay, something like that. And he was having sexually assaulted a child for many years, okay? But he never gave a statement to police. The state didn't know that, okay? And I was able to work out a very favorable plea in that case, okay? Mostly because the state didn't know was I planning on putting him on the stand to deny anything happened? And then the state has a weak case? Or what's gonna happen? The state doesn't know. Part of negotiation thing, okay? So it helps with negotiation.
In that case, you help them through, do you put them in any programs in order to help them rehabilitate themselves? Are there any therapy sessions, books you recommend, anything like that? Just kind of help them through the situation.
Absolutely. So many times in these cases, there's underlying, and especially when it comes on, we didn't really touch on it in this podcast. Hopefully we have another podcast on this issue
Absolutely.
about child pornography, okay?
It's a whole different animal.
Yeah,
right?
different animal, thing like that. But we find a lot of times when it comes to child pornography, but even when it comes to a sexual assault allegation. And by the way, many times there are simultaneous, cases going on of child pornography and sexual. Many times there's a pornography addiction, okay? Which is treatment of it. Your Brain on Porn, an amazing book, okay? Written by Gary Wilson on this issue, okay? And we give those to our clients, and I'll probably tell you, 99% of our clients say, oh my gosh, was this a biography written about me? Okay, because that's exactly what's going on in my life, okay? There's also, we send them to, many times to animal counseling, Tarkin Counseling, Larry Statter is here, Chuck Walsh for Animal Counseling, and they're, certified, licensed, social workers that specialize in sex offense cases, okay? And there are treatment programs that are available to help somebody if there's an issue. And I'll tell you is, even if you deny it, you could come in here and tell me nothing happened, we're still going to send you to Chuck Walsh to get evaluation.
Right.
Why? Because it's important to have that piece of paper in your hand, okay? To show the judge, to show the state, saying, hey, nothing wrong. I would tell you another example. Okay, it was a close call, as to whether my client did anything wrong or not, right? And the state, again, relationship with the state's attorney. The state's attorney called me up and said, hey, Mark, this is a tough one, but we don't want to drop it, but we don't want to necessarily put the child through this thing. How about your client, alcohol is involved in that case, how about your client completes an alcohol program, completes a sex offender treatment program, okay, and then we're not going to bring charges, okay? I called my client up, I'm like, I don't care how innocent you are, go ahead and do it, you don't want to do charges, okay? And he went ahead, he did it, and no charges were brought, okay?
Fantastic. I mean, that's a great example of working out a solution for both parties that doesn't necessarily involve jail time.
I could see from the client's perspective, though, having a little recourse of being like, I don't want to, because it comes with that label that you went through treatment, or of course that even if you're innocent, then he still has to kind of live with that. But I mean, it's better than getting convicted and being guilty of it.
And that's a great point. Now, I'll probably answer to that is that a lot of these programs, by the way, are probably very good. I mean, not necessarily sex offense programs, but a lot of these programs that we send clients to, especially an alcohol program, a drug program, or even any type of addiction, even a pornography addiction type of thing. Okay. I will give another, like if for DUI we send them to a MAD victim impact panel, the Mothers Against Drug Driving victim impact panel. I think a lot of these programs, there's things you can learn about, even if there's hopefully nothing wrong with any of us or most people, okay? Even if it's not needed and you don't necessarily need it for a case or anything like that, I don't think it would be a colossal waste of time to sit through it.
Absolutely not.
Like that.
If you need help, you need help. Right?
Yeah, and even if you don't need help, there are things you may learn from it. Okay,
It's a good resource.
Thing, and it's something where even if you don't need it, okay, you go through it and you never know if a family member, friend, or a colleague, this devotion to you that hey, I need help or something like that. You can say, oh, I know where to go. I know where to go to help. Okay, I met with this counselor or something like that. So. Those are the things where, I mean, there is counseling for it. One last thing about the counseling and all that is this one thing that people probably have no idea there's something it's called. But everyone heard of AA, very famous, NA, GA for Gambling Anonymous. Many people don't know, but there's SA meetings going on everywhere. Okay, really? Sexual Anonymous meetings. Okay, in which people are going there and just like AA and everything. And now, obviously, why didn't hear about it? Because it's not advertised as much. Okay, it's not something we're like, come to Sexual Anonymous. Okay, type thing. Okay, but for people that need help from talking to clients about it. Okay, sometimes that is the most helpful part of everything. Just being in a room with other people that have, sexual issues. Okay, and again, it's a topic that's always a taboo topic. Like we don't talk about that type of thing. These are people with problems. Okay, and get the help. And one other thing about that is that I think this is more for the child pornography part. But you can't imagine how many clients come to us, and the first thing I tell them is that the best day in your life is the day that the police called you up. And they'll be like, what? Are you nuts?
Are you kidding me? Come on,
crazy?
You just got arrested.
Crazy? And I always do that. And 9 months later, when the case is done, I always say, what's the best day of your life? The police came. Because for those that needed help.
Absolutely.
They got the help they needed and their lives are...
Because I think that's a big thing is you never realize that you're in trouble until it's too late. And then sometimes you're not lucky enough to have people intervene before you're looking down at multiple charges, a lengthy prison sentence. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah,
it's a hell of a wake-up call, but it's a wake-up call nonetheless.
Yeah, and I'll tell you on first, sex offense investigations, to wrap this up, is a situation where you don't want to be charged. Okay, you don't want to be charged because there's stuff that goes being charged. Okay, regarding your job. Okay, and especially here in Maryland, if you have security clearance. Okay, there's to do that. And just everything is public information. Okay, the media might be involved in some of these more, even if it's not a high profile case. Okay, even a small little case, you don't want your picture being on WBAL. Okay, your neighbor's going to see it.
And even all the local newspapers, they pick up on it as well. So there's kind of that media aspect where
friends and family would see. I mean, at that point, look, it's your reputation. It's not just the fact that there's criminal charges, you could go to jail, but like I said, it's your reputation, your job, your family, your kids, your school, it's your community.
And even if you're not guilty, even if ultimately we're found not guilty, you're never getting it off the internet. Yes, we could expunge it. We could get it off the of the case search. You get off of that. You can't get it off of WBAL. Can't get it off of Fox. You can't and you're correct about like small paper. I mean, some of these papers, like the Frederick Post, I even know this about, but had a case out in Frederick, and local for local law newspapers, it's a big story for them. So that's why you want to try to avoid being charged, and it's obviously that's a pro and con that we talk about whether to talk to a detective or not. Okay, and I always say one last thing, but there's one last thing that I almost forgot to talk about. How could we not? How could we forget about the polygraphs? When we're talking about sex, I don't know. We're going to do a whole
gambit,
half hour about sex that's going to do on polygraphs. So, just 30 seconds on polygraphs. They are not admissible in court. Actually, they're not. Yeah, they're not scientifically proven to be accurate. Okay, because people can.
Then why do they take them?
Good, because I'll probably tell you about. Do you know how to do the polygraph? You know what I'm saying? Okay. Well, probably if you go around, 95% of the people out there don't know how to beat a polygraph,
Right.
and it's a very powerful tool. Okay, and it's something where like my client always try to take a polygraph. Should I not? I'm like, well, tell me. And are you going to pass or not? And many times, and
but there's always that doubt in the back of your head, even if you are innocent. What if the machine?
Right, and that is why you need a lawyer with you. Okay, because the last time I went down to the child advocacy center, the issue came up. The detective at the end was like, "Okay, sir, do you want to take a polygraph?" And then he's like, "Oh, polygraph? What? Do I do it? Do I not do it? Do I not? What? And I was right there. I was like, "Hey, detectives, could we have a minute?" The detective was like, "Sure." And went and he was like, "Oh, that's what it is? Oh yeah, sure, I'll take it." And he took it. I guess he passed it, and no charges were ever filed.
Wow.
So it's a very powerful tool. Okay.
So do the police actually look at the polygraph as it being 100% accurate, and if you pass it, you won't be charged, or is it more of like just a tool that they use?
It's a tool that you use. They're hoping you fail it because then they give
It's
them more ammunition to charge you. Okay, but if you pass it, it's another thing that is in the mind because technically, the police and the state attorney's office are supposed to be all about justice, right? Best joke in the world, right? They're there because they're a conviction.
Right.
Okay, the police are not your friends. They're not there to gather information. They're there to gather information against you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So they're looking. So if you refuse a polygraph, and by the way, refusing a polygraph doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be charged. Okay, I had a case recently in Prince George's County in which we declined the polygraph, and they did not bring charges. Okay, so it's not necessarily that you do, but it's a very powerful tool. And I'll tell you, there are two different ways we do a polygraph. Sometimes we'll do it, our own. We have our own polygraph. I guess that's the correct term. A company we work with all the time, where they'll administer the polygraph. They'll come down to our office. Okay, they'll set you up in a conference room, and you do the polygraph. Many times, in certain situations, I have them. They'll let the police do it. Okay. Now, some people are saying if the police do it, they're gonna they're gonna play games, things like that.
But, yeah.
That's true. But the other part I find is that if you pass the polygraph, okay, if you pass the polygraph with the police one, it goes a long way with the state's attorney's office to whether you can charges or not.
All right, Mark. Well, I appreciate you coming on today and explaining this process and procedure and the tips and tricks. I really do. I'm sure we'll talk more about child pornography in the future and some of the effects on society and just your clients in general. But like I said, I appreciate you coming on today.
No, thank you very much for having me on, and I'm just glad we're here to help clients, okay, to help people in their time of needs. And I'll tell you is that there's no impossible situation. Okay, give us a call.
Sure.
I can't guarantee you results, but I can guarantee you'll feel better after meeting with us.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Hello, welcome back to the Burden of Proof. We are joined in our second segment by Ara Gonzalez, the woman behind the man you just heard from, Mark Sobel. So, Ara, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
And so, tell us a little bit of kind of how you got into being a legal assistant. Did you want to kind of go that route at the beginning through college, or take us through that journey of how you ended up here?
Yeah, so I actually went to school and I did a double major in criminal justice and psychology. So I've always liked the field of the law and particularly the criminal justice field. So how I got into being a legal assistant is don't want to be an attorney. It's too much stress and pressure. I like more the behind the scenes. So I think that's why I shifted towards that.
Yeah. So kind of what does that entail behind the scenes stuff? You just making motions for the attorneys, sort of give us a little bit of insight into that.
Yeah, so I prefer doing the motions. I prefer being more interactive with the clients and not so much being in court or in front of a judge. Definitely don't want to do that.
So you're kind of the front facing to the clients, greeting them, kind of building that relationship as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because that's, I think, a different aspect. I mean, all the attorneys we've had attorneys on, and they're stressing that relationship building, but I think you can tell it kind of disseminates down. Like that's
Yeah.
the one thing that's always going to be present. So
Absolutely. I mean, my paralegal saves my life on a daily basis. So I know you're the same way with Mark.
Yeah.
You take care of phone calls, client calls, we'll draft motions, you keep our calendar together, you keep us together on a daily basis.
That's
You
right.
guys do anything and everything under the sun, so I know we always appreciate it. Do you have any advice for somebody coming up who wants to be a paralegal? Is there a certain academic route that you would go or a certain interest that you'd recommend in order to go that route?
So I definitely recommend exploring what area of law interests you the most. So I have experience in immigration, family law, and now criminal. So I think it's definitely good to explore what area of law interests you the most because it helps you become a better paralegal if you're really interested in that one area. So immigration was a really good area for me. It's not my favorite. I definitely think I like family law and criminal the most.
it's a passion aspect of
Yeah.
it too, as well. I see. But yeah, just I guess speak to that a little bit. You started out as paralegal downstairs in the family law department, and recently you moved up to criminal. So speak to the differences and sort of whether that transition was a bit of a struggle, kind of hurdles you went through, that sort of thing. So just kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, so I would say the big difference is moving to criminal would be I get a lot more phone calls than I used to before. So it's a lot more phone calls. I think it's a lot more high pressure. People are
It's
definitely
emotional.
Yeah, for sure. I think family law is also emotional, but I think with criminal it's
Your
more-
back's up against the wall. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a little bit more stressful. So it's a lot more hand holding than in family law.
But I think that end goal, you kind of get a greater sense of being able to help someone through that situation. I mean, you see it, downstairs with family law, but this is kind of more quick turn sometimes, and I guess you can have divorces that drag on, but like this one, you can kind of see the end in sight a little bit more and just
Absolutely,
be
yeah.
able to plan and
Yeah, I
Get
think it's
that.
a lot more fast paced than in family law. Family law, you'll have a client for maybe 3 years or 2 years, or they
on
constantly
the
have.
same matter, right?
Yeah, so
Right.
I think the relationship aspect's the same though, right? So
Yeah.
in family law and criminal law, you're always creating a relationship with the client, and I've seen you do both in family law and criminal law. I mean, even though you might not talk to them as much in family as you do criminal, I know the relationship aspect's still there because it really is a partnership throughout the entire journey. I mean, whether you're going to jail or getting divorced or modifying custody, whatever it is, it's personal to your life, right? And we got to have people like you in order to help people through that. So I know, like I said, I'm grateful for my paralegal because I would not be able to do it without her. Shout out to Allie. But yeah, is there any other advice you give to anybody who's coming up in the field?
yeah, I think we're the first line that the clients get. So I think it's really important to have empathy and know that we're meeting these clients at a pivotal point in their life. So it's very important to understand what they're going through, be patient with them. And we're a lot easier to get in touch with than the attorneys. The attorneys are constantly in and out of court, so we are going to be that main line of communication. So just treat every case like if it was your family member.
Interesting. Yeah. So, and how is it working with Mark as, on a day-to-day? I know Mark is he's an interesting guy, but I mean, I'm just
To say the least.
kidding. Yeah. But no, speak to the kind of how working up here now with him and the differences, and because I know the team downstairs was a lot bigger, and you're coming up to a more smaller kind of team. Speak to that difference a little bit.
So it's a lot more different in the sense that he's in court a lot more often than the attorneys downstairs. So I kind of have to figure things out on my own a lot of the times, or just troubleshoot on my own.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it kind of forces you to be a little more resourceful because at the end of the day, you're just trying to get to that end goal of getting the client what they want or what they're looking for. So, cool.
So I got a question for you.
Yeah.
So from somebody who's not in the legal field,
Mhm.
if you were to get a criminal attorney or a family law attorney, what type of attorney would you want? I mean, from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think just coming into it, if I had a legal issue, I would want, I mean, it's not anything new, it's that empathetic side. You want somebody like, I mean, not necessarily want them to be your friend, but you want them to genuinely care about your interests. And if you can show that through in-person meetings and just the way that you're speaking to me and the way that you're providing resources, it's not as much, it's a little bit intangible. You kind of have to sit down and I feel like you feel the person out, and if you think they're going to be successful for you, then you would just run it from there. But a lot of it is that intangible relationship building. You kind of want
Absolutely.
to have that trust, because if you're going to be spending thousands of dollars, you want to trust that the attorney that you have working for you is working for you and has your best interests at heart. So I think it's as much emotional as it is skill-based and accolades and that sort of thing as well. So
Right, we're not just making widgets.
Right,
It's not like a
right.
product. It really is a service-based industry, and the people you work with,
Mhm.
and the relationships you build, and the attitude you have, and perspective, and the service that you provide the client is the product at the end of the
Yeah.
day. So you have to really pour into that as much as possible, and not only create a personality around that, but also just understand that that's what people need.
Right, and it's like, yeah, I might not need this nice attorney that will like sugarcoat it. I might need a hard ass that'll be like, hey, listen,
Right.
right. Do this, or you're gonna, like, I might need that kick in the ass to get stuff done, and it'd be better for me in the long run. So it's kind of weighing that as well.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be honest with the clients,
Mhm.
because at the end of the day, they look for you to advise them on what's going on. And if you're not honest about the situation, you can't best prepare for that situation.
Right.
Have you ever run into that with a client, having a hard conversation with them about either the chances of winning a case, or in family law about the outcome of the case?
Yeah, and I think it's also very client specific. Some clients prefer a lot more honesty or more communication. Sometimes you have to read the client and know, like, this
Mhm.
client wants a lot of updates, this client is fine with not hearing from us, but I always try to set that expectation, like, we're about to go into this phase of the case, so you may not hear from us in 30 days or in 2 weeks. Which one would you prefer?
And that's something that's not even just something that you could apply to the legal field. I mean, in any industry, any service industry, it's all about, when you're dealing with clients, about managing that expectation, not only up front, but throughout, whether that be with clear communication and setting those guidelines and setting those boundaries to just set them up for success. Because if you don't guide the client, they are just going to go off on a tangent or go and think that they misremembered something, and they think that they're entitled to this, when it's like, we can only kind of help in a certain area. So it's all about that communication and honesty up front as well. So
Absolutely.
Cool.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the benefits of working here, is we have the support staff to talk to people and really guide them through the situations and talk with them as best as
Right.
possible.
because I mean, a lot of the times, I mean, if you can speak to it, but a lot of times when clients are calling in and they're either emotional or all pent up, they just want somebody to hear them out and listen
Right.
and hear their story and hear their concerns. And then you've got like 50% of it's just hearing them out, but then also you can provide that, all right, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
And then go from there. So,
And talking to Jim, I know our ratio of paralegals to lawyers is actually, it's pretty good, right? So within the legal industry, there's sometimes paralegals, you can handle 4 attorneys, 5 attorneys, 70 case, 80 case caseload. And we try to minimize that as much as possible here, just because we understand that communication and how much you do communicate with the clients and how important that is. So it was a kind of business decision. I give props to Jim for making that decision, because he's always focused on client satisfaction and that communication.
awesome. Cool. Well, I've got nothing else. Ara, thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Good talking to you.
Good talking to you.
Yeah, and go see what Mark did this time. I know he's got himself in some trouble. But thank you, and stay tuned for next week. We'll be diving more into the sex crimes and criminal defense angle, kind of tailoring off of this episode, and stay tuned for that next week. We will see you all then. Thank you.
Lastly, if you or loved one are dealing with a legal issue, whether it's divorce or something else, the absolute best thing you can do is speak to an attorney right away. You heard it today with Mark Sobel. Get in touch with us as soon as possible, whether you're being investigated or whether you've actually been charged at that point, because the sooner you reach out, the sooner we can help. So give us a call whenever you need us.